I'm Rick Murphy, CEO and founder of Cogent Growth Partners. If you're a technology services provider or an MSP thinking about growth, acquisitions, and how to achieve a realistic liquidity strategy or an eventual exit, this show is for you. This is Cogent Conversations.
Let's talk about exit regrets. So biggest exit regrets. Let's talk about some of them and how MSPs that are selling now can learn from it. So what do you think MSPs, they regret most after selling their business?
Oh boy. Number one would be having structured a deal poorly. A poorly structured deal comes to roost after closing, right? Let me back up. So we've done well over 200 closed IT deals in our 16 years, which is pretty prolific. There's a few people have done more than us, but not very many people have done more than us. Evergreen has done a whole bunch more than us, but we actually help them too. Well, they did, I think, 40 deals last year or something like that, which is just wow. That's more than we did. You know, we do 12 to 20 things a year, projects and deals, basically as a group. I think they did 40, 45 last year, that's a lot. But, at the end of the day, really bringing that back around, it's like lying, not being honest is the number one problem. Now, in our whole history as a company, we've only had less than a handful of deals not work out very well. There's probably been another handful that don't work out quite as much as people would want them to be. In every single case, it is the seller being dishonest that was the problem. Every single one. Now, out in the world, we don't work with them. We have a no jerks policy when it comes to clients here at Cogent. I'm trying to figure out a little glyph to put on our website saying no jerks, no jerk, like a good hashtag, no jerks allowed. Oh yeah, maybe we should start doing that. That's a good one. I didn't even think of that. So we're thinking about keep thinking of the good housekeeping seal, no jerks allowed or something like that. So I have a more violent version of that also, but I won't share that today. But the idea is the buyers tend to be, the scuttlebutt is, evil buyers going to rip you off. The buyer's going to take advantage of you. And again, it's sort of a real estate mentality. It's just like people trying to take advantage of each other is not what happens truly in a acquisition of an IT services business. I'm trying to acquire good people. I'm trying to acquire good client relationships and put it together with my tools and put the whole thing together, and we all prosper and do well, right? That's the goal. And if I'm a buyer and I'm untrustworthy or I'm being less than honest and I don't have any integrity or whatever, you probably already have a shitty business anyways, right? It's probably already a not very good business. It's probably, there's other things you would notice as a seller when you're doing your reciprocal due diligence on the buyer that you would notice, wow, there's something not working here, right? So somebody's not being honest with me. That dishonest buyer is very rare. Certainly rare for Cogent. We don't work for people like that. We don't suffer anybody that we don't agree with. And they won't suffer us either because we don't agree with them. Right. So they kind of take that sort of self-selects. But I'm not legally allowed to waterboard anybody. Darn it.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
Darn it. We can't put them under lie detector, which would be handy at times also. Right. And so occasionally, if they're just dishonest, pathological liars are almost impossible to spot, right?
Oh my goodness.
So in the deals that have had problems, especially big problems, we've had 2 completely unwind, but that's a pretty good track record out of hundreds. In every case, the seller was either deluding themselves or just outright pathological liar. And their stuff wasn't what as advertised, to be nice about it. And regretting being full of it on the other side of a deal, kind of hard to fix, right? And so if your earnout comes back to bite you in the ass because you misrepresented your customer relationships. And I had one deal that's a really good example. Actually, I'm working with that's the same buyer just this morning. Actually, we're trying to get an LOI done on a deal. And this happened with him. It's a company in Texas, and we bought a company in Texas. And true story, we did a physical closing where the buyer and seller were at the conference room at the seller's building.
Wow.
And the internet shut off. And my buyer had to pull out his credit card and turn the internet back on. And nobody thought about it a lot. But about, probably 4 weeks in, tops, my client calls me and he's like, wow. I'm like, what? What? I don't even know. Do I want to hear this next part? And the power was shut off. They found out that they didn't pay the healthcare premiums for the previous 3 months before closing. They didn't pay the rent for the previous 2 months before closing on purpose. And that all of the customers hated the owner, like hated him with a passion. And they were so relieved that he had sold the company and that he was no longer there. They still have most of those clients. So, I mean, there was a win for the buyer. But in that case, in terms of regrets, the seller who was lying, cheating, son of a gun, didn't get paid all the money that he bargained to get paid for because he misrepresented the relationships, and some of the customers bolted and hated him and couldn't wait and used it as an excuse. So that regret is just not being truthful. So being truthful is your friend. Being truthful is the way to get stuff done. Most of the buyers are actually truthful, straight up people. It's one of the reasons they run good businesses that can afford to buy a business, if you think about it in the big picture, right? Dishonest people don't tend to make that kind of success unless they're really stealing from people. So anyway, the biggest regret is being a big fat liar, and then you're getting called out on. You're gonna get caught, and so they regret getting caught, and then of course they're going to regret having done what they do. But a lot of times it's a personality problem. It's not fixable anyway in the first place. So that's one big regret. The second one would be, I think some people miss running the company. So on the one side where it's like, hey, you can be part of another company, you can be employed. Don't automatically think you're unemployable. Don't automatically think this is going to be a problem to go to work for somebody, so to speak, and become part of that new team. But sometimes that doesn't work either. It does, where they come in and go, boy, I'll be with you for the next. I've signed a 3-year employment agreement, and I'm going to be the executive vice president of this, or I'm going to be, senior vice president of that, or whatever they're going to be on the other side of the deal. Maybe they're C-suite even, it doesn't matter. But they're there for 4 or 5 months and they're just hating life, and they can't go and pick up the checkbook and write a bonus check to themselves anymore. Right? That stops. They can't make a decision to, go buy that new company car. It's not up to them anymore. Those are just silly symptoms, but it's a symptom, right? But they just wake up going, you know what? I can't do this. And then they self-select and move on. So that happens. So that regret does happen. Much rarer than you'd think. Again, I encourage people to try to play well with each other, and you'd be surprised how well it works most of the time. Most of the deals that we do, the vast majority of the deals we do, are talent acquisitions where everybody joins the team, especially in PE deals. You're trying to build a bigger roster and a bigger, more fun, cooler people to play with. So those are probably the two biggest ones. Deal structure. Let me hit deal structure. So deal structure, if the deal was poorly structured, then that's a regret, because if you didn't have good advisors, we're one of other advisors that are out there also. But that advisors includes, attorneys and CPAs and whoever, anybody, your family, whoever's advising you. If you've got good advisors, then it is likely you're going to have good success. If the advisors were not up to snuff and you're not getting good advice, or you didn't heed good advice and you wanted to cowboy it yourself, and the structure is not really buttoned up properly, that's going to end badly, or it's going to at least have bumps and hiccups, and those can be painful. And so there could be some regret there, as well as that it wasn't structured as well as I thought it would be. A lot of people, so you touched on this, so let's go there. So you touched on earnouts. Earnouts have a really bad name, mostly because they're poorly structured. So an earnout based on EBITDA, for example. First of all, EBITDA is not a GAAP accounting principle in any way, shape, or form. There's no such thing as EBITDA in GAAP accounting. We can do a whole other podcast on that. So you ask, well, let's get a CPA and we'll talk all about that some other day. Please ask anybody else you ever want to ask. And you can quote me. And people, I love saying that in a big room when we do our talks, when we do our speaking engagements, because the CPAs stand up in the back going, "Yay! Thank you, Murphy! Yay!" EBITDA is not a GAAP concept. It is a nickname. It is look up what Charlie Munger thought about that. I'll let you quote him yourself because he was not nice about it. Warren Buffett, people like that. The EBITDA is bullshit. That's his. I'm quoting him.
Huh.
So free cash flow is a GAAP accounting. Generally accepted accounting principles is GAAP, and free cash flow is a GAAP concept. It's all about free cash flow because it takes your balance sheet into consideration. It takes your cash flow into consideration, and EBITDA does not. EBITDA is a shorthand for a proxy for free cash flow in the absence of the proper accounting to actually have a free cash flow calculation, because most people ignore the balance sheet. Okay. And for example, you might have debt service from a balance sheet issue. Well, that debt service is impacting your P&L because you have to pay debt service. But when you go to sell the company, your debt has to be paid off because it usually encumbers the asset. You've got some sort of a wraparound, universal commercial code lien against your property because you borrow money from a bank. So that bank loan has to get paid off, or you can't transfer the ownership of that asset because so that's a good example. And in that case, being able to say, okay, what do we do next with how that works and what's EBITDA, what's free cash flow? So it's just a symptom of that. But when you're talking about free cash flow and how that works forward, you just got to keep all that in mind, if that makes sense. Did I finish that thought?
It certainly does.
Ask me that question one more time. Just hit me with that question one more time.
What do MSP owners regret after selling their businesses?
Well, it's the regret thing. I think we covered. You asked.
Yeah.
You had a follow-up question that you asked me that led me down the EBITDA path. I lost my train of thought.
One quick mention about that. When we bought one of the companies that we bought back in the 90s, and we didn't realize, but this owner had impending lawsuits just about to start.
Ooh.
And so we had a good lawyer that indemnified us from all of it. So the lawsuit started, and then he had to defend them himself. So yeah, there are cases where these kind of unscrupulous sellers. What surprises founders the most after a deal is closed, you think?
When it goes well. People watch too many movies. They watch Wolf of Wall Street. They watch, pick the movie. Stand by. So people watch too many movies. They just don't have experience, and they're not listening to experienced people that know how it really works. For the most part, most people are honest. Most people do the right thing. Most people mean well. They want to have prosper from doing a deal, and because you're the seller in that situation, you should also prosper and do well. I think where we got off tangent was, when you look at people on expectations and you're thinking about structuring an earnout on EBITDA. That's where we went, right? That's where I lost my train of thought. So if you think about doing an earnout, which has a terrible name, it has a terrible reputation, but it shouldn't be, because most earnouts that don't work well are poorly structured. They're not structured well. They're not betting on the right things. So if you structure an earnout based on EBITDA performance, EBITDA is hooey. EBITDA is made up. All right. It's not a GAAP accounting principle, so it's not free cash flow, which means you can manipulate EBITDA. That's why Charlie Munger and all the professional investors don't use EBITDA and don't think about EBITDA. It's a manipulatable number. All right. So free cash flow is a little bit manipulatable too, but it's a little bit more straight line, and it's GAAP accounting. So for example, I'm going to sell my company and I'm going to get $1 million of an earnout over the next 3 years. And I'm going to get it, monthly payments for the next 3 years based on maintaining EBITDA at the same exact level as when I sold the company, right? Sounds easy enough. Sounds doable. Problem is, what if you want to hire 3 extra people? And what if I don't want to hire those 3 extra people? What if you do, but I don't? Because it's going to affect my EBITDA. So then I've got to argue with you in the contract about how do you do your accounting. So if you have to, if we don't argue about how you do your accounting, then there's nothing to constrain you from the owner, the buyer, from assigning doing expenses that you might not have been doing before, but it negatively affects the EBITDA performance, and then I get penalized on my earnout. Those are the earnouts those are the types of structures, earnouts, that look good from a buyer's perspective. Again, we don't do those at Cogent. We never have, never will. I'd rather terminate an agreement than do a EBITDA-based earnout, by the way, because it's fraught with potential danger. And why don't you just say, hey, here, the gross revenue shows up, and I can get 10% of the gross revenue that shows up, and I'll get a check for that every month? Well, you can't screw around with the gross revenue shows up. So I collected, $100,000 of gross revenue every month. The revenue shows up, I get a check. If it's $90,000 one month, great. If it's $110,000 next month, okay, fine. I still get my check. I still net out. That's based on something that's easily measurable, hard to screw up, really super simple, right? So the more complicated you make something, or the more the more hooey based it is, using hooey in a sentence, if it's based on something that can be manipulated, then it's a bad idea. So all of the bad press on earnouts have come from poorly structured earnouts that are built on unobtainium or built on unrealizable stuff.
What do you think owners wish? I know you try to get into their head here, but what do you think they wish they had fixed before even going into market?
Employees, usually. It's such a big expense, right? And where people cost themselves money as a seller, where people are cautious as a buyer, and then just trying to get it right as close as possible. A good leaner in horseshoes, it doesn't have to be a ringer, but a leaner would be helpful, is running. So either you're running hot, which means you got not enough people and they're all overworked, or you're fat and you got way too many people and you're essentially running like a philanthropy. And I see that a lot. We see overemployment a lot. Mainly, they don't know how to fire people. It's not evil. You can't keep everybody. Not everybody's the star employee, but I challenge people. I actually had somebody thank me for this just this week, actually, on a call, where he remembered I told him years and years ago, everybody's got the one worst employee of your company. I don't care what company you are. I don't care how big or small the company is. There's the one employee is the worst employee. Why are they still employed? Why are they working for you? Why are they working for the company? Don't even make it personal. Why are they working for the company? What benefit are they? So get a better employee, or don't have an employee at all. And you'd be surprised. Two things are going to happen. One, you're going to make more profit. Unless you're running a philanthropy and you want to be an employer by trade, right? Which some people do. Community activists or the community. A lot of people. Well, I won't get political. I won't get political. I believe in. I'm a capitalist. I will admit to being a capitalist, and I don't think people should just be employed just because they're human. That's not how that works. Do something worthwhile and earn your way through life, and make other people happy. Anyway, I have a lot of people work for me, and they're my family, right? So anyway, so overemployment means you're running fat. You're not making the profit you could be making, and it means also that the potential acquirer, are they going to get stuck with having to deal with your employee mess after the fact, or is it going to be dealt with before the fact? So if you run a nice clean shop that's running right on throttle, where you're not fat and you're not running hot, you don't have too many employees, you don't have too few, you're just right. That's the way to be. And the way to solve that for yourself and ask yourself a question is, hey, I got a trick question for you. So I can ask you this question right now. So in your MSP, you own an MSP, and you own an MSP, and you've got all these people. How much more business can you do without adding more people? All right, now think about that for a second. Let the clock tick for a second, and then I'll go on. So a lot of people brag, or they think they're bragging. They go, well, I could probably do 30, 35, 40% more business with the people I got right now. So what does that really tell you? What do you think that really means? Okay, you are overemployer. There is a correct answer, and I'll come back to that in a second. But wow, that's a terrible answer. And every time that somebody says that to me, they are bragging to me when they do it. Every time. They're not sheepish about it. They're like, yeah, I could do another 30% of business without having to hire another guy, another person. It's like, okay. The correct answer is 10 to 15. So if you can do another 10% of business, if you can't do another penny of business, I need to hire people right now. Well, that means you're running hot, which means your EBITDA is misstated. So it's not really a good indicator of how much money you make and the future profitability for a buyer. Because if you need to hire people right now, well, and then you're telling me the company's making $1 million in free cash flow, well, that means you need probably another 3 or 4 people, or another 2 or 3 people, which means your free cash flow will be down to 800 or 750. So if we're basing a deal based on your $1 million of free cash flow, and we do due diligence and find out that you don't have enough people, I'm going to do what's called a reverse add back, a negative add back, and I'm going to put extra people back in the seats. A lot of our clients do this, and that's a big thing every client of ours looks at, and even clients that aren't ours, everybody looks at that. Every buyer looks at that very carefully, because human resources is such a big expense, because all the benefits that go with it and everything else that goes with that. So the idea is to be operating just right. Hey, I could grow 10% in sales, maybe 15% without having to add any people, but then I got to add people. That's the correct answer. And if you're telling yourself this in the mirror, you should right now go in the mirror, look yourself in the eye and go, okay, what's my real answer to that question? Ask yourself that question. What's the real answer? If the real answer is 10 to 15%, you're doing just fine. And keep doing what you're doing. But if the answer is I can grow 20, 30, 40%, bad answer. And if the answer is, golly gee whiz, I need 5 people today, also bad answer. You shouldn't be selling your company if that's true, by the way. At that point, if you're running really hot, do not delude yourself as to what your actual free cash flow is based on accounting, because the accounting isn't going to uncover, I need more people to work. That's not going to uncover that. Does that make sense?
Perfectly.
That's why we do due diligence. This is Cogent Conversations.